has become a thing that's gone on, it seems like in this, especially this last year, ideology is more important than art.
Way more, certainly to the awards.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, ideology trumps art. Ideology trumps individual effort. Ideology trumps good. Ideology trumps entertaining. You couldn't say shit if you had a mouthful. All right. And every bestseller, every play that was turned into a movie, if there was anything cool about it or anything, that's all going to be drained out of the movie. It's going to be weaned out of the movie. It's just the way it is.
Every best-selling novel, every stage play that makes it to the big screen, if there's even a hint of something provocative, it gets scrubbed clean, watered down, and sanitized. That's just how the industry operates now. Quentin Tarantino lit a fire under modern Hollywood in a scorching interview with the always outspoken Bill Maher, and the result was pure gold. The iconic filmmaker didn't hold back, tearing into his harshest critics and labeling them as sanctimonious virtue signalers and woke phonies. Maher, never one to stay silent, shot back with his signature sharp wit, keeping the sparks flying. For anyone craving fearless, unfiltered commentary, this was a must-watch moment.
Before we run out of time, I have to say to you, besides the great entertainment, I have always really appreciated the way you pushed back when anyone tried to stifle you, shut you up, shame you, bully you. They tried it with the last one, with Once Upon a Time in the Hollywood, simple, about Margot Robbie doesn't have enough lines. And you do what I wish other people would do. Instead of apologizing like a little you say, I don't agree with your assessment.
Bill Maher has never hidden his disdain for Hollywood's obsession with woke narratives. I've discussed it often, the industry's shift from rich, layered storytelling to surface-level virtue signaling, swapping meaningful character arcs for trending hashtags. But in the midst of the ideological fog hanging over Tinseltown, a few voices still manage to cut through, and Quentin Tarantino is one of the brightest. Even Maher, one of Hollywood's fiercest critics, holds him in high regard. Why? Because Tarantino is unapologetically old school. He doesn't chase trends, doesn't preach, and refuses to bow to the wave of performative progressivism sweeping the industry. He's focused on making films that challenge and provoke, not just make audiences feel good about themselves. In a creative world where most play it safe, Tarantino rewrites the rules. It's bold, it's different, and more than anything, it's a breath of fresh air.
There has become a thing that's gone on, it seems like in this, especially this last year, ideology is more important than art.
Way more, certainly to the awards.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, ideology trumps art. Ideology trumps individual effort. Ideology trumps good. Ideology trumps entertaining.
There's two kinds of movies, virtue signalers and superhero movies.
This is exactly why Bill Maher holds Quentin Tarantino in such high regard. He's one of the rare voices on the left brave enough to call out the absurdities within his own camp. Tarantino doesn't tiptoe around uncomfortable truths, and Maher recognizes that kind of unfiltered honesty as a rare commodity in today's Hollywood. We've all watched the entertainment industry drift away from imagination and narrative depth, anchoring itself instead in rigid ideology and hollow virtue signaling. One of the most glaring examples? The ill-fated Snow White reboot, a critical and commercial disaster. Why? Because the creative team prioritized politics over storytelling. In a misguided attempt to avoid offense, they replaced the beloved Seven Dwarfs with CGI stand-ins, sidelining the very little people actors who've long cherished and championed those roles. It wasn't progressive, it was patronizing. And that's exactly the kind of performative pandering that both Tarantino and Maher refuse to ignore.
Are you bullish on the future of movies? Because
well, look, you have to always look at it.
Are we going to get back to that place?
Look, this happened. This comes in waves. This absolutely comes in waves. All right, so it's like, okay, just looking at the 40s. All right, that was during the wartime, but that's also the time that you had film noir, where you actually, even though with the Hays Code, you had these dark, dark stories that were being told. But then after the war was won, then you had the 50s, which was the first of the completely homogenized decades, where you couldn't say shit if you had a mouthful. All right.
Let's pause for a moment, because Tarantino made a powerful observation that deserves serious attention. He brought up the Hays Code, the strict moral guidelines Hollywood adopted in the 1930s to censor anything deemed too provocative, especially when it came to sex and controversial themes. At the time, critics saw it as a direct attack on free speech and artistic freedom, an effort to sterilize creativity in the name of moral conformity. Here's the twist: Tarantino argues that this kind of censorship is back, but now it's not enforced by government mandates or conservative watchdogs. Instead, it's driven by today's perpetually outraged social justice crusaders. These digital mobs wield cancel culture like a weapon, punishing films and filmmakers who dare to step outside the accepted ideological lines. Art is no longer judged by its vision or craft, but by how perfectly it aligns with a checklist of approved views. Directors self-censor, writers second-guess, and studios fold under the pressure of online outrage. It's a new Hays Code in disguise, rebranded as progress, but just as suffocating and creatively dangerous as the original ever was.
And the 60s, pretty much from like 1960 to 1966, was the 50s part 2.
Right.
But then what we think of as the 60s starts in about 67, and that's when New Hollywood
Bonnie
comes
and
out.
Clyde.
Yeah. And that's an absolute positive response to the homogenized 50s.
So it's
All right.
going to come back again.
Okay, and then it goes into the 70s, but then went into the 80s.
All right.
And that's why you came up with politically incorrect, because that was the first. This is basically 80s part 2, what we're living through right now.
Well, I'll just take one more go at it. There's going to be a new golden age. Please be there and part of it.
Now here's something that really stands out. Tarantino believes Hollywood might finally be purging itself of the woke culture that's gripped it for years. And if that's true, all I can say is, thank God. Because let's be honest, this era of performative progressivism hasn't just worn thin, it's become downright suffocating. Too many recent films feel more like sermons than stories, drained of imagination and burdened by political checklists and sanitized creativity. If Tarantino's right and the tide is starting to turn, then bring it on. A creative revival centered on rich characters, unforgettable storytelling, and genuine emotional stakes, rather than agenda-driven messaging, could be the reset Hollywood so desperately needs. Imagine cinema that moves us, surprises us, even challenges us, without lecturing us. That's the kind of movie magic we all fell in love with in the first place. But during his sit-down with Joe Rogan, Tarantino also made a troubling observation, one that adds a whole new layer to this already complex conversation. Take a look.
And then there's like, okay, this guy or this woman is going to write a think piece in the New Yorker about my movie, or in the Los Angeles Times, or in the New York Times. And they're going to write some think piece about it, or on this website or that website. And they're going to go against it and talk about, oh, this is a retrograde vision, or this is a regressive vision. Or Quentin has become right wing, and this movie has a right wing bent because of the way they, Quentin is identifying with Rick Dalton with hippies. He's that's how it's.
Is that really a take that someone had that you become right wing?
Yeah,
because of a character. In
yeah,
the film?
Even like a critic who liked it, A.O. Scott, goes, well, this whole vision seems more on the right than you would imagine.
It might sound extreme, but it happens far more often than you'd think. Many viewers, especially on the political left, tend to judge films through a rigid ideological lens. The moment they detect even a whiff of conservative themes or right-leaning perspectives, the reaction is swift and intense. Suddenly, it's no longer just a movie, it's a perceived threat. Outrage floods social media. The cast, the crew, the writers, anyone remotely involved, becomes a target for daring to express values that don't align with the dominant narrative. What's often overlooked in all this noise is a fundamental truth: cinema isn't meant to exist inside an ideological echo chamber. Films are artistic reflections of society, its dreams, its flaws, its contradictions. They're not propaganda tools for any single worldview. Not every story will affirm your personal beliefs, and that's exactly the point. Art's power lies in its ability to challenge us, provoke thought, and, yes, sometimes even offend. Rejecting a film simply because it doesn't cater to your politics is more than narrow-minded. It's a denial of what true art is supposed to do.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily make it wrong, make it bad, but it just seems like more on the right. Well, Rick is coming from a place more on the right, not me.
Yeah.
Per se, but I am telling the story through Rick's point of view. And then, they say something, well, how come they don't talk about, how come there aren't more black characters in the movie? How come they don't talk about the Vietnam War more? Well, basically, the movie takes place between 2 days. Okay, well, they didn't bump into Jim Brown, right, on those 2 days. All right, they saw who they saw during those 2 days. Well, they didn't have a conversation about Vietnam in those 2 days.
Exactly. It's long past time for social justice warriors and hypersensitive critics to accept a simple truth: not every movie is made to preach. Some films exist purely for entertainment, for escapism, humor, thrills, or sheer visual delight. And that's not just acceptable, it's essential. Others tackle serious, even uncomfortable, themes. Both kinds of films have a rightful place in the cinematic landscape. Not every story needs to carry the weight of a moral crusade. What many forget is that directors are storytellers, each with a unique creative vision. That vision doesn't always reflect their personal beliefs, it's often about exploring new perspectives, characters, and worlds. Forcing filmmakers to insert social agendas into stories where they don't naturally belong isn't progress, it's artistic self-sabotage. When a film is twisted to serve a message that contradicts its core, the result is a diluted, disjointed product, stripped of the very beauty and power it could have had. The greatest films don't resonate because they preach, they resonate because they move us, through character, emotion, storytelling, and authenticity. Let art be art.
I think you're correct. And the thing about it, though, is, look, those kind of like academic college think pieces, they're just fine. Like in a college situation, they make sense. I can take a book or a movie and come up with some argument that goes, that's like that's more of a subtextual argument about a film. That doesn't mean I'm right, but it means I can make my little argument,
right?
For the course. But but I have no illusions that that's what the director was thinking about.
In the end, Tarantino's perspective feels like a breath of fresh air, a powerful reminder that true art isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about provoking thought, sparking emotion, and reflecting the raw, messy reality of life. He remains one of the few voices in Hollywood unwilling to bow to ideological pressure, earning respect even from his fiercest critics, including Bill Maher. Whether he's calling out the absurdity of woke culture or defending creative freedom, Tarantino stands firm in the belief that filmmakers must be free to tell their stories, without fear of cancellation or conformity. Not every film needs a political agenda, and not every director should be judged through that narrow lens. And maybe, just maybe, Hollywood is finally waking up. If this is the start of a new era built on bold, unapologetic storytelling, then count me in. Because art thrives in freedom, not under the weight of ideological purity tests. If Tarantino's right and we're witnessing a real cinematic revival, no more lectures, no more forced agendas, just great storytelling, then the best is yet to come. If you're tired of the nonsense and ready for real talk, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. See you in the next one.